And we're live. Narish, Kalia, and Claire Core, thank you for arriving early. Sometimes there are benefits to being the early bird. I'm very pleased to introduce Narish, who is Hindu and has a few things to say about how Hinduism works.
Okay. Uh, I, I was thinking about focusing entirely on the idea of idolatry because in your book and in your previous sort of conversations with other people, you've referred to the Hindus as idolatrous. And I thought it would be a fun topic to sort of tackle. You know,
Yes, I thought you were going to say, "Oh, it's not true. We're not idolaters. How dare you?"
well, that would just defeat everything, wouldn't it? No, I think the idea of discussion is to have some fun. I mean, people don't have to sort of agree with each other, but it's like in a courtroom. You know, you put forward an idea that well, there's a defence and there's a prosecution, and each side sort of puts forward their arguments, and it's a bit like that. And I mean, when I read your book and the word idolatrous Hindus first hit me, there was that sort of mixed feelings. But it's something now that I'm laughing at, and I quite like the concept of. And I thought it'd be fun to try and sort of defend the concept of the idolatrous Hindus.
Well, yeah, it's a nice, simple idea, and it doesn't involve, I don't know, long lectures about, complicated conspiracy theories. And I'm also aware of somebody called Dayananda Saraswati. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes.
Apparently, he was a Hindu who didn't approve of idolatry.
Well, I think a lot of Hindus are confused because the thing here is idolatry isn't really something that's within Sanskrit. There's no such thing as idols really in our culture. Idols was the term that the British applied when they first came over to India to what they perceived as the vast number of gods that we had. So, we don't really believe in idolatry because we don't have idol worship, and idol worship in that sense is banned.
But there are idols in Hindu temples, which I have
Ah,
visited.
right. Now, the thing here is, what I need to do is go back to say the original meaning of idolatry first. In the sense, when it was created, when the Abrahamic religions created idolatry, it was to address specific practices that were being used by the Israelites prior to the emergence of Judaism. And what the Israelites at that particular time, they had many, many gods. So there was a polytheistic, there were polytheistic tribes, different gods. They worshipped gods like Moloch, Baal, El, and they actually made human sacrifices, and these sacrifices included children, animals, slaves, and most horrendously, they even sacrificed their firstborn. They had fertility cults and many other abhorrent practices. So, I mean, it makes sense then why the Hebrew Bible condemns child sacrifice and forbids that the Jews stop committing idolatry for these very reasons. And it's even in the Torah, in the first five books, they go on at length, and there's quite a number of verses where they have to write down that you will not burn your sons and daughters in the fires of the gods. And there's a number of verses in Deuteronomy and Jeremiah, sorry, explaining that you do not commit child sacrifice to God. So at this particular point, I can understand why the Hebrews had to introduce idolatry to stop these practices. And with Islam, it was exactly the same. I mean, I haven't read the Quran, and I am sort of only going from an essay that I read that Khalid signposted me to, which was the philosophy of the teachings of Islam. Now, at one particular point, the promised Messiah explained that even before Islam came to Arabia, Arabia was actually no different to how the Israelites were before God gave revelations to Moses. That they were doing the same sort of acts that they shouldn't be. You
Oh,
know,
they practice the same cruel practices.
yeah. I mean, the exact things he wrote was at that time the people of Arabia were steeped in barbarism. No social pattern prevailed, and they took pride in every sin and misconduct. A man married an unlimited number of wives, and they were addicted to the use of everything unlawful. They considered it lawful to marry their mothers, and that is why God Almighty had to prescribe. That is today. Your mothers are made unlawful for you. They ate carrion, and some of them even cannibals. There is not a sin of which they were not guilty. I mean, it goes on quite at length about they killed their female infants with their own hands. And again, the Arabian tribes at that particular time also worshipped different gods, to which these practices uh, they used as forms of worship. So again, I can totally understand that when Allah gave the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the revelations of forbidding idolatry, it made absolute sense because you had to give law and order and substance to the people, and hence this first rule or this rule of idolatry comes. Now, respectfully, I say is, can you find any uh, Hindu behaviour that you would consider similar to what the Hebrews practiced, the Israelites practiced, and what the Arabs
You mean the
practiced?
Canaanites practiced? Oh, you mean the human sacrifice and the marrying of mothers and that sort of thing?
Yes, yes. But
Okay,
yeah,
I suppose I think the correct terminology would be to call the people in the Promised Land Canaanites who were polytheists, and then after the Jews took over, then they would be called Israelites. With their religion of Judaism, because I was a little bit confused for a bit. What you asked me about Hindus, I mean, of course, I accept that Hindus don't practice human sacrifice, don't marry their mothers, and the other terrible things that the Canaanites used to do until they were replaced by the Jews, who were called Israelites. And what I've been mentioning recently is this concept of the opportunity cost. Are you familiar with that concept, Nourish?
no,
It's something I picked up from economics when I was doing my A level. So basically, the idea is that we only have a finite set of resources, only one property, only one source of income, etc. And if we apply it to the wrong purpose, we no longer have it. So it's like you can't have your cake and eat it. And I guess the harm of idolatry is saying, well, if only you had been following, if you had been properly guided by the Quran, you wouldn't have done all these silly things that caused your society so much harm, and fought all those wars that were not victorious wars, and you wouldn't have made those mistakes. I think that is basically the idea that I'm promoting, that if you don't follow a book of rules, you're going to do things your own way and make mistakes you could have easily avoided had you been following a book of rules.
right. Well, a book of rules does actually exist within Hinduism, but it's not one single book.
Yes, you have so many, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata,
Well,
and
I mean, they're like sort of human works, but they are things like the Vedas and I think things like the Upanishads, which what we would consider like divine, where we're actually given the rules on how we should behave, etc. I mean, that's where we get things like our concept of asima, like non-violence, the things of dharma and ethical conduct. They come from that. We haven't got one specific rule book, but we're taught that through those.
Would you agree that Buddhism is codified Hinduism?
I don't see. I mean, it's truthfully, is without upsetting Buddhists. I don't see the difference other than it was like a different form of Buddhism where the Buddha went out to try and get enlightened, and after that, everything has been misinterpreted.
I mean, I suppose I'm thinking of Buddha, kind of codifying it by talking about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Paths, and,
Right?
just
Yes.
saying, I'll just reduce this system to, a list of rules that people can remember, such as the Ten Commandments and no hide
Yes.
laws, or
Yes.
even the
Yes.
613 laws of Judaism, so people know how many there are. It's
Yes.
that sort of idea.
Yes. I think they exist within Hinduism, but they don't seem to be, like I said, put into one particular book. We're taught how do you call it? We're taught the ways of behaviour and our rules through our parents.
Yes, I mean, having studied well, the five world religions, I don't pretend to have, studied, the others. There seems to be common features to these religions, which is basically to get people to marry young and, have legitimate children and stay together for the sake of the children and respect their parents and, live in families.
Yes.
That was basically what all the religions that you might have heard of, in all the advanced civilizations you might have heard of,
Yes.
they promoted this practice.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you there.
And, I'm basically saying Christianity is the weakest link, and I'm saying it's actually well, I hope it won't offend you too much. I mean, it's worse than Hinduism because, there's a kind of, I don't know if you understand my ranking of the four Gentile religions that Jews are supposed to do.
I saw the article yesterday.
Oh, thank you. And I'm saying this is what they've been supposed to do. It's like, in order to be light unto nations and really explain the Gentile and explain to the Gentile the purpose of the no-hide laws, you have to rank their religions. And I've actually, had a go at persuading them to do it, and they're basically saying, no, are you crazy? It is dangerous. Do you know what they did to us? And we're not going to do it, kind of thing. And anyway, we hate the Muslims, so we're not going to be promoting their religion over ours. It's that kind of idea
Yes.
that I get from them. And I'm basically saying, even though Christians don't admit it, they are, they do have idols, and they are idols of Jesus and Mary, and they do worship them because if you know what.
Images.
Yeah, I mean, they do bow before their idols. There's even a term for it in Catholicism, which is genuflecting. So, these Catholics are supposed to kind of, bow or curtsy or something when they see the idol of Jesus.
Yes.
So, I'm saying, Christianity is really the problem because, if God, I mean, okay, the Christian narrative is that Jesus was crucified for blasphemy and, for saying that his papa was God and they crucified him. And what did the Christians do? They worshipped him as the co-equal of God for nearly 2,000 years. It's sort of like,
Can I?
imagine if somebody did something terrible to you and I, worshipped him. I mean, that would be, really offensive to you, kind of thing.
I understand what you're saying about Jesus, right? But I really see Christ differently. I think Christianity has been corrupted, and the way people are trying to describe what Christianity is, it's all messed up. I grew up in England, and in those days, you were given religious education, and it was only Christianity. Because we didn't have technology those days. Every Sunday, I would go along with all the kids in my street, Sunday school. So I sort of grew up with the Hindu teachings of my parents, but I was given the full sort of Christian upbringing. It's very similar to my sort of British counterparts, but I saw it quite differently. I didn't see Jesus as God. He was not God's counterpart. I mean, he came and he preached a philosophy. He was given a divine revelation, and how we're trying to interpret it is, I think, the mistake, because there's only one God, and God didn't do the things that he's purported to do. We're talking about Jesus, a person who claimed that he was the Messiah, and the Messiah is a prophet, and he was preaching a new ideology. I think it's the Christians that mistakenly start to equate Jesus with God when that cannot be the case. Because the thing it's that when Jesus, before his crucifixion, he fasts and prays for 40 days to God. I mean, you don't do that for yourself. There is a distinct difference between what I see as Jesus as a divine person, in the sense of like his revelation from God, but he cannot be seen as God, and that is a corruption. And before we even start, I don't understand how the Holy Spirit ever got thrown into the mix. And even to this day, 60 odd years later, I still don't understand.
I'd be
What?
delighted to explain this to you, because I think fundamentally is Christians don't, well, obviously they're not encouraged to explore the circumstances leading to the founding of Christianity, because if they did, it would be, well, Constantine Christianized Rome because the old Roman imperial cult was failing. People don't change their religions for fun, and countries don't. Things have to be pretty terrible for them to change their religion. They would have been, they would have had to suffer a revolution or an invasion for them to change their religion. But anyway, Constantine the Great had this idea that he had to change it, and he was prepared. He spent his life basically preparing Rome to be Christianized. That's why he called the Council of Nicaea, inviting all the bishops in his empire to come to Nicaea and agree a doctrine. And when they agree a doctrine, he would roll it out as the new religion of Rome. That was his plan. But unfortunately, they couldn't even agree, these bishops in Nicaea, and they split between the Arians and the Athanasians. So basically, the Arians were the ones who said, well, Jesus is God or an angel, but he's not the co-equal of God. And the Athanasians were Trinitarians who said, no, he has to be co-equal to God and the Holy Spirit. And talking about the Holy Spirit, I'll just mention that the Holy Spirit is a concept that was present in Judaism as well as Islam. And I'm going to say that the purpose of the Holy Spirit is to give the Jewish concept of God logic. So basically, their conception of God is that he created the universe, and he exists as pure spirit and energy outside of the universe. So when miracles are caused, who causes it? They can't say God, because it's like, well, if God lives outside, exists outside the universe as pure spirit and energy, he can't enter into it. And if he enters into it, then what of creation is also God. And there's been all kinds of theological arguments about whether the burning bush was God himself talking to Moses. But anyway, that's the purpose of the concept of the Holy Spirit, which is that it is an agent of God, because the logic of this system does not allow God to enter his own universe. He can send people, sure, or Holy Spirits and things, but he can't himself enter into his own universe without upsetting the order of it, because as you know, Jews are very strict about idolatry, and they say the worship of anything that isn't God is idolatry, and we cannot, as Jews, think of God as in any way material or physical or like anything that we have set eyes on. So God cannot be part of the universe, and it is idolatry to confuse God and his creation.
Right. Thank you for enlightening me on the two philosophies that emerged at the Council of Nicaea. I wasn't aware of that, and thank you for explaining to me how the Holy Spirit works. Because I seem to understand now. Whereas if you see that God is outside of His creation and He can't enter His creation without upsetting things, then I understand the need of creating the Holy Spirit as a means of intervening in his own creation. No, I understand that concept.
Oh, great, great. Oh, thank you.
It helps. I mean, the thing is, it's quite a good defense because it's sort of like, is how do you call it? I think it defends Christianity in that way.
Well, I have a little bit more to say about the schism between the Arians and the Trinitarians. So, so from the beginning, even before Rome was Christianized, there was a schism between the bishops and they couldn't agree. And the Trinitarians, I think, ultimately were correct, because I know there are lots of people who say, oh, we don't know what the Trinity is all about, but we have to believe it in order to be Christian, and if we don't believe in it, we will be considered heretics. And in previous centuries, they were burnt at the stake. And I'm saying it's my theory. I haven't heard it anywhere, but the whole point of the insistence on Jesus having to be of co-equal status to God was to win a theological debate against Jews, because I think the Athanasians, predicted what the Jews would do, and the Jews would say, what is this? You worship you worship a Jew, and his followers we consider to be heretics, and who is he? He's not our God. He's not the co-equal. He's lower status. Jesus is lower status than the God of Israel. And I think the Trinitarians, immediately understood that the Jews will always be saying that about Christians. If Christians just said, oh, Jesus is a bit divine, but he's not the co-equal of the God who created the universe. And that, therefore, it had to be insisted that Jesus is the co-equal of the Holy of God. I mean, that's the important thing. That Jesus had to be co-equal to the Abrahamic God in order to not be a low status religion, lower in status than the religion of the Jews.
But that ideology goes against the idea and concept that there is only one God.
Well, the Jews call it shituf, and the Muslims also have the idea that it is associating partners with God, and
Okay.
I mean, some say it's worse than idolatry, because it's more offensive to God if he exists.
You explained the Holy Spirit and the need of the Holy Spirit as an entity, a separate sort of like entity that intervenes on God's behalf.
Yes, to get Mary pregnant, to cause natural disasters, to perform miracles, that sort of thing, yes.
Okay, but then again, Judaism and Islam both also recognize angels as spiritual beings that are created by God with a variety of roles such as messengers, protectors, and agents of divine will. I mean, even to the point that people do pray to the angels or even seek their intercession. So,
well, I think that they're not supposed to do that, because, according to the strict view of Judaism, angels have no free will. So whatever they do, that they're just doing it because God told them to.
Hmm.
And we you may be aware that there was I think it was Iblis, Satan, who didn't agree that God commanded angels to bow before men, because he didn't see why he had to bow before creatures that he regarded as being made of clay and therefore inferior to him.
Yeah.
And well, I think anyway, I mean, the reason is that man is above angels, and angels are supposed to serve man, which is why they deliver messages and do stuff for humanity. But obviously it would be a mistake to worship angels, because well, why would you worship angel when you can go to the top man?
Maybe I say worship, I says pray to, you know.
Well,
So
I
what
know Jews say Catholics are idolaters because they pray to saints. Maybe it's the same concept.
oh, right, because I have a sort of like, I go to a lot of sort of shrines of saints, and I have them over my lifetime. But when I go to a shrine of a saint, it's usually to pay your respects rather than to sort of pray to them as any kind of divine entity. You go to that person's shrine and you're saying, well, thank you for that message that you gave, or that wonderful act that you did at that time to enhance you to sainthood. It's not even considering anything to do with God. But I understand what you're saying, but I do find it quite difficult because,
It is quite strict, I know. I mean, I'm just
well,
passing
no,
on
no,
to you
oh no,
what Jews think of the whole thing.
no, I know, I totally understand because I mean the Jews are the most strictest when it comes down to that. They can be like, like as far as angels and everything goes, that they only pray to God. I totally agree upon that, but because it was part of their sort of theology, I was just trying to sort of equate the idea of having, like it says, you got angels as celestial beings. Then why can't the same be had, say, for the concept of devas in India? Those idols that you sort of go to see, in temples.
Yeah, I think in our minds, sometimes we might worship, things without even realizing that we're doing it, because Muslims have this very developed concept of hidden idolatry. So it is in fact possible for a Jew or a Muslim apparently praying correctly to be guilty of hidden idolatry, because it's saying you might you'd be going through your prostrations and whatever, but actually you might be plotting the death of your enemy,
Hmm.
or working out how you're gonna cheat on your wife, or whatever, that kind of idea, really. So it's a thought crime, is basically hidden idolatry. And I'm saying hidden
Okay.
idolatry manifests itself through hypocrisy, which is which could send you to death, to hell,
Okay.
according to the Quran.
I need to just open the door 1 second. Oh, got somebody knocking my door.
Okay. So, welcome, people in the chat. Hello, Eunice. Hello, Effluent for you. Yeah, so I can talk a bit about hidden idolatry.
Sorry
I
about
mean,
that.
hidden idolatry could be just a substance abuse problem. You let something run your life. You let your addiction to alcohol or drugs or shopaholism or gambling run and ruin your life. That is a kind of idolatry, a
I
hidden
think
idolatry, though.
I think that is one concept I will totally agree with. And that kind of a hidden idolatry permeates virtually every religion. I mean, when I talked about these sort of devas and the temple things, that's separate. But when you talk about hidden idolatry, that is the major threat that I think civilization is facing. And
People lying to themselves.
or being lied to, or changing the
Or
rules.
preferring to believe in lies.
Yeah, yeah, because for them it seems to be a sweeter alternative. It feels some kind of sort of animal sense. I think the only way I can explain that is, the corruption of Hinduism in my own lifetime is I was brought up to be pious and sort of believe in all these things. I went to India in '87 for the first time, and it was exactly the country how I imagined it. And over the years, going back to India, I have watched the entire thing change. I used to sit with my mum and watch Bollywood programs, and they were great. They were nice family entertainment. And slowly towards the mid '90s, I'd find myself sitting in the room getting embarrassed, my face going red because of inappropriate material being presented by Bollywood. I go to India and suddenly every shop has got a half naked woman trying to sell you a bottle of Pepsi. Then you're looking around and you're seeing the changes in the Indian culture as well, where people are now adopting more Western values, where once where you had, how would you call it, modesty, it's now become liberal, and women are allowed to go without sort of being having their sort of head covered, as an example. And this corruption is going on all the way through Hinduism at the moment, in the sense that people are no longer following the old ways. All these new gods are coming in, and these are the hidden gods of um, the new age, the new idols that everyone is worshipping.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm glad you saw my point so soon. Yeah, and I'm okay. And what I was trying to say is that I know a lot of Hindus and Buddhists. If they ever hear of secular Quranism and the strong stance I take against idolatry, they're going to worry that I will be proposing to close their temples down and whatever. And I'm saying no, people who are in theory capable of being guilty of hidden idolatry, and who is to say, even with the best will in the world, we don't, slip into that kind of thinking without even realizing that we're doing it. If Jews and Muslims apparently praying correctly cannot even avoid hidden idolatry, they have no right to be closing down anybody's places of religious worship, and that's why I feel I have to interject here in case anybody's worried about plans to close their places of religious worship down.
Well, I think if you want to sort of promote secular Quranism, it's got to appeal to sort of everybody, and there has to be sort of, well, I wouldn't say allowances, because the thing is, if we start to allow allowances in rules, then they become fluid. Uh, I
Yes,
think you have,
and I take the literal approach. A lot of my reasoning is, well, slavery hasn't been forbidden in the Bible or the Quran, so I think that should be allowed, and nor is prostitution, and I'm going to allow it. And everybody freaks out. Oh, you needn't have gone there, Claire, because nobody was even talking about reintroducing slavery or licensing brothels. And I'm just saying, I'm going to take the literal but permissive approach, and I'm going to take it literally, and I'm not just going to give people a selection of my favourite verses. And that's what I want to impress on people. It's not my choice of favourite verses that I want people to adopt. In fact, I'm going to make it. I mean, the plan is for any country adopting it, their Supreme Court or their judiciary would have to decide which verse is a commandment of Allah capable of being made into legislation and implemented. And I don't want to be the one saying, here's a list for you to do. It's like, no, if you were to adopt it, then you would have to do it, of your own free will, and you would have to do it in your own way. nobody's going to tell you what to do. But obviously, if you interpret it in a rubbish way, you're going to get into trouble and things are going to go wrong. And obviously, you should bear in mind the most reasonable and humane way of interpreting it.
Right. Why not just introduce God into the concept?
Well, I'm respecting the fact that most Westerners don't believe in God, but I'm also, in a way, there is no need, because I think all the rules, all the laws that are going to be controversial can be explained, saying, well, there is a purpose to licensing brothels and reintroducing slavery and discouraging unmarried parents and banning usury and all the other stuff. It's like eating pork. Well, you'd only avoid pork if you're Muslim, and the fact is that secular Quranism envisages a society where non-Muslims exist and their rights have to be protected too. So obviously, if you're Muslim, you're not going to be eating pork, so fine, don't eat pork. But the non-Muslims still want to eat pork, so you have to let them. But I think actually, some Muslims have been really very helpful, and the real problem is not that people don't get it. It's sort of like, oh, it'll never catch on because people hate it, and the ruling classes won't support it, and you'll never get to be platformed by the media. That's what they're saying. It'll never catch on, because I think a lot of my detractors, Jay Walker in particular, he's basically saying, I haven't made it safe for him to support it, and therefore he's not going to support it, because if he were to support it, he would lose he would be ostracized by his white middle class friends. And I think that is the thing. And I think Muslims would like to support it, but they're kind of looking for their imam to support it, and their imam are looking to their Western government to tell them that it's okay to support it. I think that is more the problem than anything else, really.
Oh, that's quite a lot to think about, really.
Yes, yes. I've seen them.
A couple of points that you made, but they sort of like had some ideas, but they passed through my mind too quickly.
Yes, I think a lot of it is psychological in that that all these subconscious motivations. It's not that they can't see, but they're giving up excuses, finding excuses not to do the right thing, because they're afraid that they're going to be the tall poppy that gets cut off.
I just remember going back to your point where you were on about legalized prostitution. Now, I quite have a lot of difficulty with that, because I would more envisage that the laws that you are promoting, that they would have the clauses in there which actually guide society in methods of behaviour, that you don't have a requirement for prostitution to exist. If you see what I mean. The thing is, say if I had a son, I would rather be teaching my son to not look at a woman in that particular way, to treat everybody he sees as a mother, sister, or a daughter. And the idea of then sort of having a society where we legalize prostitution, I find that a very sort of uncomfortable.
I understand, but I think the purpose of prostitution, it has a social function, and it's basically to you may agree with me that many wars and revolutions are caused by sexually frustrated men, and I think the reason why so many men are so passive is that the being distracted by all kinds of marriage substitutes. Like, it's okay to be gay. Yes, you can have premarital sex. Yes, you can, have all kinds of sex with another consenting adult. And they keep thinking of, more forms of sex that it is that they legalize, because I think the effect of that is to make men to distract men from either revolution or becoming married fathers. And my purpose in legalizing prostitution is to make it clear to women that there are only two forms of having sex. You can give sex to men as a prostitute or as a wife. Why would you choose, not to do it in a high status way? And if I were to ask any woman now, they'd say, but there are all these women in between who are neither prostitutes nor wives, giving sex to men to distract them from married fatherhood. And I'm saying they confuse themselves because under the current rules, these men can just never commit. They can persuade a woman to have sex with them, and then they can move on to the next one and the next one and the next one if they're high income and educated and reasonably attractive. And in the end, I think they destroy themselves, because if you go through life, having countless women, having sex with countless women, you won't be able to make yourself settle down with just one and pay for the children and be, annoyed by the irritation and boredom of married life. And so I think, even men who are able to easily seduce women, they'll also die childless. Or if they have children, they won't be, taking much of an interest in them, because, it would be an unmarried mother having their child, and they won't be parented properly. And I think this is really the problem of widening and deepening degeneracy. That's why we're just getting stupider and weaker and more corrupt. And it's not just our ruling classes. I think ordinary people, are just, corrupt people complaining about more powerful corrupt people.
I take on board what you're saying. Is it not one of the Noahide laws which says do not engage in forbidden sexual relations?
Well, the whole point of prostitution in red light districts is a way of saying you're not supposed to be having extramarital sex, but we're going to say it's okay if you have sex in these licensed premises in a certain part of town, and so you kind of know your status. You're not having the high status sex that you're having with your wife. You have to go to the sleazy part of town, and you have to pay. You have to agree a price with a woman up front, and this will impress on you that you are having low status sex, because marriage is the most expensive form of sex.
No, I take on board what you're saying again. I think it's, if you have a rule which says do not engage in something, right? We can't say, well, here's an area where you can. It's like, do not commit murder. Will we have an area where we can go and commit murder?
But we do. Self-defense is a complete defense to murder. And in war, people legally kill people, and execution is state-sanctioned murder. There are always exceptions.
So stealing is basically like spoils of war.
Well, the thing is,
like you can blaspheme. What about eating the limbs of a living animal? It's.
Okay. On the question of prostitution, these are just transitional arrangements, right? Because if you just suddenly say, you guys, you have to go cold turkey, I think there will be riots in the streets. So you have to manage it, and the transitional phase is that, well, if you really want to, find someone to have sex with outside marriage, you have to go to the sleazy part of town and maybe, bring your own prostitute in your, and use our love hotels in order to make it legal. But otherwise, it's not legal. But you can do it. You can do it. It's just that, you're, it's a lower status kind of sex. And I think eventually, women will, the penny will drop with women who will say, well, obviously I want to, be the kind of woman who gives wife sex. I don't want to be a prostitute. And the women in the middle, who are the biggest group of women who supply extramarital sex to men, they are the biggest group. And they have to be made into the smallest group. And that's why you either force them into marriage or force them into prostitution, and they have a little think about what they're, what they really want out of life. And I'm saying, yes, maybe in our shameless age, most people would be, most women would be quite happy that, they're in OnlyFans, right? They, it's a kind of prostitution at one remove. And once you get get most women used to the idea that they are providing low status sex, they might think, well, I think I want to be a wife. I don't want to be doing this for the rest of my life. And when they leave prostitution, there will be, not that many replacements. And then eventually you'll get, just very few of them. But, for the moment, the transitional arrangements have to be made, I think.
Well, I take on board what you're saying. So what you're saying is that the transitional arrangements are there as a sort of measure to help this particular kind of behaviour, right, of immoral behaviour die out over a period of time. So I assume with that kind of plan, that obviously what we would need is, starting of the new generation to learn that forbidden sexual relations, homosexuality, extramarital affairs, all this kind of thing is not acceptable, and they're all brought up in a moral, ethical code under a set of rules where eventually, I would say that prostitution no longer exists. Am I correct?
Yes, or exists in very small pockets.
Right. That's fine. But my fear always is with something like prostitution existing, there's always that thing to misguide people. Whereas, if that's out of the way, I personally think that it might be just a lot easier for us to sort of teach our children, this is the rules and this is what you will follow. I know it's a bit simple, but I think that's where we have, especially in the West, they don't teach you that kind of thing. Now it's okay to bring your 10th boyfriend home. Mothers don't.
Well, that's the thing. People kind of don't really know how to protect their children from this sort of idea, and because it's like, I know of parents who say, as long as you don't get pregnant, they say that to their girls, or they put them on the pill and they're not even 16.
Yes.
So, I know it's not going to be sorted overnight. So, but if you talk about these transitional arrangements, people might, the penny might slowly drop. Because yes, maybe there are lots of parents who actually allow their daughters to bring in their boyfriends to spend the night. They can say things like, "Oh, he's an established boyfriend, and they've known each other for not days, but months, years, or whatever." But what is the right time? Surely it can only be when they're properly married. But all these rules have been undermined, and I think people are in confusion. It's a kind of how long is a piece of string. Idea, like, well, we don't know, it seems all right, so maybe we should allow it, but having these, very distinct ideas once again being understood and acted upon by people will, eventually make people understand. And what I'm saying is that eventually the biggest group of women who was, giving sex for free. Basically, that's what
Yes.
women do. It's like for free, and then at least you can say, well, you're worse than a prostitute. At least a prostitute is getting money for, but you're giving it away for free.
But Claire, don't you think that, I mean, as our society has over the last, say, since the sexual revolution progressed to a point where we've got that large percentage of women that have sexual relationships here, there, and everywhere. And you talked about women coming to their senses through sort of licensed prostitution, that they're low status, you know, that they're not high status anymore. Don't you think that's the same that modern women are now coming to understand that their body counts, short of a better word, are making them the low status, the unmanageable ones? It's like by indulging in that behaviour, you're already now becoming less than what you would have been had you been in a marriage.
Well, yes, and I'm afraid these women will have to be, warnings to, future generations of women.
Yeah.
And I was not. I don't know if you know the story of Rahab, who was this prostitute from Jericho. When the walls of Jericho
No,
came
no,
tumbling
I'm not,
down, there's the
I'm
song.
not familiar. I'm
And
not familiar. I'm not familiar.
well, anyway,
Please tell
I'm
me.
saying that she was a prostitute, and she married a prophet of God. She married Joshua.
Yes.
So I'm saying, it's not completely irredeemable, and the book of Jeremiah. I mean, it is an interesting metaphor. I don't know if you know that Jews are supposed to be the bride of God. I mean, I know Catholics call, the Catholic Church a bride of God. But anyway, the idea is there. And then the analogy of Jews being the openly adulterous wife of God is often made by rabbis. And to go even further, the book of Jeremiah says, even if Jews behave like prostitutes and sell themselves, I will take you back. And that is what is said in the book of Jeremiah.
I mean, yes, redemption. I understand the concept of redemption, but I think it's quite difficult to redeem yourself when biologically a male desires a woman that hasn't had lots of partners, rather than a woman seeking redemption. Because after all, that kind of male-female relationship isn't like religion. I'd rather marry somebody who was already within the rules than somebody who comes to me afterwards and says, I've redeemed myself. I'm not that way anymore. It's like, well, okay, but that's the consequences of your behaviour. Yes, you're forgiven. You can come back to the fold, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I see you as marriageable material to me anymore. Well, I don't see you as desirable as I would, say, a female who hadn't had to go through such a redemption.
Okay, I mean, we can use a new car and old car, used car analogy, can't we? It's like, yes, everybody would prefer a new car, but maybe you can't afford one, you know. And I think, most people are in some way, well, most people are not saints, and most people know that casual sex is part of the culture, and most people will have had casual sex, and they can't, beggars can't be choosers, basically. That's the thing. And it's like, okay, we're not all virgin brides and virgin bridegrooms, so we just have to make do with the best that can be found. you know
Yeah.
Unless you're some sort of billionaire, you can't actually. I mean, there are all these terrible jokes about, oh, you can't even find a virgin schoolgirl in Britain these days, you know.
I've never
You know,
looked.
in secondary school, you know,
Yeah.
no, no, no. I mean, it is pretty bad, and I've spoken to lots of people who would tell me that they've had underage sex.
Oh my God.
You know,
Well,
so in a way, we don't need to feel that bad. It's like there's always somebody worse. You know, we just have to correct ourselves and stop doing the bad thing.
well,
You
the
know,
situation here is I'm totally in agreement with that. That's the whole thing. I think we is that we need rules. We need rules to govern our behaviour. That's why I've always advocated go and follow a religion, because you need some kind of guidance to stop you sort of going down these wrong paths. And you're doing the same, really, but without the religious aspect to it.
well, I suppose in a way it's religious in the sense that I'm relying on a religious book that most people will have heard of and which they hate. But yes, I mean it used to be really understood. Like, well, I'm not supposed to have sex with you because you haven't married me. And it's like even the most dim-witted woman can understand it. But now they're told in their sex education classes like, oh well, we'll do it if you feel like it and you think the person is a nice person and has asked you nicely. They learn such dangerous nonsense in schools.
Yes, I know.
It's like, okay, actually, adults don't know if it's a good idea to have sex with certain people because they might be really nice when they're trying to seduce you and then they turn after them, when they're bored and irritated. I mean, who knows?
Well, the problem is in a society that creates predators like that, we have to worry about our children. And hence, people like myself really are seeking stricter rules that sort of safeguard our children, basically. Yeah, and the other thing is, if we sort of have a society where we've got natural predators coming out, uh, you almost fear that your own children aren't going to be also turning out that way, and that is a difficulty in sort of living in the West and being a sort of an ethnic minority. Is you try to put your own ethics and your own culture's rules, but the Western uh,
Yeah.
education system, it just seems to be there to totally undermine and negate anything that you teach your children.
Well, yes, because you're this little islet in an ocean of sewage, and the thing about immigrants is that actually we are worse off than them because we're actually stupider than they are because it's like they can say, oh, we're white and we're European and we've been here for generations, marinating in our own moral sewage, but these immigrants, they cross oceans, they cross continents to be rats clambering on board a sinking ship, to merge our DNA with the degenerates. I mean, that's what's happened to immigrants who've come to the West.
Yes. I don't think this emergence of DNA is going to produce anything positive.
Well, I mean, there've always been, the debates about, is it nature or nurture that makes people turn out, in a particular way. It's like, well, we'll never know, will we? But I mean, the best we can do is give the best, environment and,
Well, I think
genes.
that's important. I mean, I'm coming from the perspective of animal husbandry. It's, for instance, like choosing the next generation of dog. You make sure that the right characteristics are sort of bred into that person. It's controlled. For instance, I've got a very good sheepdog. She's intelligent. I wouldn't want her to accidentally mate with a stray, because I'd want her to sort of mate with an equally intelligent kind of dog, so that the function of the sheepdog continues. And I think the problem
It's
is
so
when you
quickly
start.
done in the park, isn't it? You take a dog in the park and some dog is on top of her less than a minute it's done, right?
Yeah, well, you have to be. I'm very, very careful, obviously, because I have kept female dogs. So I have to be very worried about that. But I think it's something that we need to keep a hold of.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's why humans have this thing called marriage, because it's like saying no, but nobody can enjoy free love and just have sex with whoever will have sex with them. You have to jump through a few hoops to show that you're worthy to have legitimate children, and that hoop was marriage, and in previous generations everybody understood. And now they can't. I mean, it's all this transgender thing. People who wanted to get married would be happy to perform their gender roles because it's their only way of displaying their marriage ability,
Yes,
right? And now it's like, oh, we don't even have to marry to have sex. We can just have any kind of kinky same-sex sex, whatever. And that's why they think, oh, would you expect me to wear trousers as a man? What if sometimes I fancy wearing a skirt and knickers? And you can't do anything with them because they're not even shamed anymore. Because the whole idea of a marriage license, which I don't think they called it that anymore, but they did in America, was that, yes, it licenses the couple to have sex and children with each other.
a marriage license.
Yes. And all these concepts are barely remembered. But it's just this one thing, really. It's like marriage is eugenic. We can't be having sex with our, mothers, fathers, uncles, nieces, and,
Well,
brothers, sisters. It's
this
like, because it will have an effect on the quality of the next generation.
exactly. This is why I was using the dog analogy. Sorry, animal husbandry was marriage for our children should be no different. It's not for them to decide. It's us in our wisdom to choose the right parents because the next generation is going to be created. It's too much of an important thing just to allow people to sort of be guided by their loins. You can't. You can lose. It takes many generations to gain certain qualities. I mean, just look at the way different countries are described. The stoic British, the sort of like the happy Italians, the sort of efficient Germans. I mean, these kind of traits take many generations of breeding to sort of come out within the society. And that is through, I think, where parents get involved and you marry the right people to produce the next generation. When we allow uh, any other system where people start choosing uh, any old DNA to form the next generation, I think we're going to come into huge amounts of problems. It doesn't always work the same.
Yeah. I mean, look at the peanut allergies. That's a sign of dysgenics. All this autism and mental illness and all that kind of thing. And then we have AID, artificial insemination by anonymous donor. You know, I mean, we don't. People have a right to know their lineage. That there needs to
Yes,
be a kind of selection process
yes,
about whose children we're going to have and look after.
yeah. I always thought that was the best and correct way that society always went. I think when we deviated as a society away from that as a norm, that's when the corruption of everything started. Then it just starts to fall down and break apart.
Are you old enough to remember Keith Joseph Nourish?
Keith Joseph,
Hmm.
what was he?
Well, he was nearly the leader of the Conservative Party, and he said, things that he had to apologise for in 1974 in his Edgbaston speech in Birmingham.
Right, no, no, I'm not.
Um,
But
but he was basically talking about unmarried mothers and destroying the human stock of Britain.
yeah, well,
He
he
was
was. You're absolutely correct.
and
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he had to pay for it. By everybody went crazy. He apologized, and then he realized he couldn't be prime minister well, he couldn't be Tory party leader because there was a Tory leadership party, a Tory leadership election coming up, and guess who became prime minister? Maggie. So these Tory men will, they half remember and they half don't, because it was so horrible. It's actually a conservative, a Jew even, a Jewish baronet saying what is obviously true and having to pay for it in his career. And that's why nobody ever criticises unmarried mothers now.
Yes. Well, it was a thing. I mean, I worked for Citizens Advice. If you're aware of Citizens Advice,
Mm-hmm.
it's a charity that gives free advice to people that require it.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, because we dealt with a lot of benefit inquiries, we saw the benefits system change. And and at the time when I was working for the CAB, my big sister, she had a post office, and I would help her on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment the Blair government introduced the loan parent benefit rates, premiums, and that you get more money as a lone parent,
Mm.
the entire scope of Whiteheath in a council estate where all my friends live completely changed. Women didn't really care anymore. It was like they get more money being a lone parent than they would by having their partner with them. So a lot of men were told, well, basically, you're going to have to move out because this is affecting my benefits. So each government has, how do you call it, colluded and pushed this agenda all the way, of promoting the idea of single parents, single women.
Mm. And, and they're not showing any signs of repenting. They can't discuss any of this without calling you names. And you can't talk to women about it because, for obvious reasons.
Mm.
Because, basically, what I'm proposing is slut shaming, and if you're a feminist, you will never agree with slut shaming because feminism is really the it operates by bribing men with extramarital sex. So
Well,
you're telling them not to do what the only thing that would perpetuate feminism, which is women giving men extramarital sex.
and this is why slut shaming is a good principle. Um, I think slut shaming is, I'm going to be like calling a spade here. Basically, in life, actions have consequences. And if you're going to behave like a slut, then people are going to call you one. So, then to cry about slut shaming as a concept, it's like, well, that's life. If you're going to behave, in a particular way, then you will take that particular label on.
Yes, and one of the things that we as humans need to know is that if you think of the non-human female when she chooses a mate, she would be thinking, well, is he good enough? Is his tail long enough? Is he strong? Whatever. But I don't think women who have casual sex think in that way. They're not even thinking like of, well, would I like my children to have his qualities? That they don't even think like that. So even female, non-human female animals think more, eugenically than human females. If human females are just, having casual sex and having one-night stands, and this has obviously profoundly affected Western society.
Well, you're totally correct. I mean, people often turn around and say, no, the animal world is promiscuous and, they sleep around. And they often use one particular type of ape that is in the bono apes, as as an example that promiscuity is normal within the animal kingdom, and they're completely wrong because research found that the only reason the animals behave in this kind of behavior because humans were encroaching upon their territory, and this caused them to become stressed out. And actually, that sleeping and promiscuous behavior was a stress reaction to the encroachment upon their territory, which was growing ever smaller due to the populations growing.
Yes, and the thing about the difference between bonobos and chimpanzees is that, well, you can't actually tell the difference,
No,
except that they behave in a different way, and the chimpanzees are not becoming extinct, but the bonobos are.
like I said, the bonobo's behaviour is how do you call it? A stress reaction to the to the destruction of their environment, basically. And there was, I don't want to misquote the person, but there was a book written called The Human Zoo in the 70s. I can't remember. I'll send you the link. And and he proposed that basically things like rape, sexual immorality, and all that kind of behaviour that is displayed by animals are usually animals in captivity or animals that have been put into a situation which is unnatural for them. And he was arguing that humans would be now in society displaying the same behaviours as animals in a zoo. That all these sort of like sexual predators sleeping around, promiscuity was related to our environment, which was bad for us.
Yeah. The thing is, with all that's going on in, foreign policy and, the West, trying to pick fights with all these countries. And I'm thinking of China, that, the Chinese government is concerned that, about the Chinese birth rate. And they're trying to somehow encourage, Chinese couples to marry and have children and have more children. But, I don't notice a similar concern in Western governments who seem to want us to die childless, gay, or, sterilized.
Yes.
I think that is truly sinister. They can't even be bothered to govern us anymore.
It's almost like they want to remove certain people out of society. They want certain, how do you call it, stupid people gone.
Well, there's a way of doing it without, destroying the lives of so many people. They destroy so much potential. The
Yes.
people who might otherwise have been all right if they were given the right instructions. They've been encouraging so many people to destroy their lives by going to university.
Well, I think the problem came when universities became, at one particular point, just cash machines. You didn't really have to work hard anymore to go to university. I think it was at the point where anything became a university. When I went, there was two institutions. There was a university and there was a polytechnic. And they were like different types of institutions, and the government decided to call everything a university. Now you've got colleges in Birmingham that call themselves university. I think what was a university once is it's no longer the same now. I mean, these are just indoctrination centres where people can feel good that they're going to get a degree, and the only reason they get a degree is because they go down and sit and listen to some kind of useless ideology that they think that's going to improve this world. Things like equality.
I mean, it can't possibly work. Equality can't, because
No,
if you imagine an army run on egalitarian principles, well, who's going to, give the orders and who's going to
exactly.
follow them?
Well, the thing is, every job I had to go for, what's your stance on equality, Mr. Carlier, before you could even get the job. And I hated it. I hated going through that sort of, because I never believed in it. For me, it was like, it's not about equality. It should be about merit. It's like saying, it's like teachers nowadays who apply this equality. What they do indeed is set the mark so low that the stupidest person in the classroom is the level that everyone's at. They're all equal now. Because unless the stupid person isn't made to be, classed as equal, then if you're a bright person, then that equality's gone. We're taught everything differently. Everything should be by merit, but not by equality. And like you said, you can't run an army. Someone has to give rules. People need to follow them.
Or nothing would get done.
No, this is what we're seeing now. I'm looking at this stupid government. What the hell has the Tory government achieved since it got its huge majority back in 2018? Zero.
Well, it doesn't matter who's in charge because they just follow the orders of Washington, and Washington is mad. Well, Biden is mad. The Americans don't know what they're doing.
We've been the 50s.
Except starting World War III and, maybe to hide their mistakes by blowing us all up so nobody knows.
Well, Britain's long been the 51st state of America. Whatever Washington wants, whatever Uncle Joe says, the British bulldog runs and fetches the ball. It has been almost my entire lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just dragged the relationship between what would you call it, America and the UK is a very strange one within my own head, because it was during the First World War, the British were losing, and that's when they asked the American Jews to sort of help intervene. And now you imagine you're losing a war, and what the moment the Americans agreed that they would, the British and the Australians then attacked the Ottoman Empire and took away Palestine, which I thought was a strange act considering we were at war with Germany.
So we say that again about Palestine. Can you say that again? I didn't quite catch it.
It was during the First World War, as I understand it. It was Britain was losing the First World War. Germany was obviously winning at that time.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it was Britain. I can't remember who the government was, the Prime Minister was, but they asked America to sort of help. And the Americans did agree, but the strange move that the British then did, which I never understood, because I play war games, and what I didn't understand was you've now asked somebody to help you defeat the Germans. I understand that logic. Then suddenly, next move is the British and the Australian troops attack Palestine and take that territory away from the Ottoman Empire. Obviously, the Ottoman Empire was supporting the Germans, but I thought that it was a strange military move to make at that particular time.
Well, Gallipoli, are you referring to Gallipoli?
No, no. The thing is, I'd have to look. I mean, it's sort of old knowledge, but the point I'm sort of saying it.
Yes, because I mean, I was kind of talking about British Israelism. So,
it is just strange because that's when, Israel, the modern Israel, started. Really, it was like I never understood the move. What I'm saying is, maybe somebody with more military experience might tell me. Why the hell did the British and the Australian troops attack the Ottoman Empire and take away Palestine when they were being defeated by the Germans on the front?
Oh yes, that's a good question to ask. I think it was from 1915 to 1916. That was the Gallipoli campaign.
Right. Yeah.
So I think, or the Dardanelles campaign, defense of Gallipoli, Battle of Gallipoli. They wanted to take control of the Ottoman Straits to weaken the Ottoman Empire, to expose the Ottoman capital at Constantinople to bombardment by Entente battleships and cut it off from the Asian part of the empire.
No, I understood the move, the reasoning behind it, but I just couldn't understand why they were doing that when they were losing on the other front. The front where they needed the help, and they got the help, then they go and do this incursion into the Ottoman Empire. I didn't think, personally, I didn't feel the Ottoman Empire was that much of a threat at that particular time. Because the moment America intervened, that would have been enough to put in the First World War was enough to sort of like push Germany into defeat, into surrender. So I didn't like I said. For me, it was like this strange relationship that the British had because that was the time when the British then took Palestine, which was a move I did not quite understand. But then it was after that they gave it away to the Rothschilds, which
I think it
again,
might be something to do with the Suez Canal, control of the Suez Canal, because there was a Suez crisis in the 1950s, wasn't there? When the British and the French
yeah,
invaded Egypt, and America told them to sling their hook.
well, that crisis is a lot later. I mean, the First World War when they took the Palestinian region off from the Ottoman Empire was totally separate. But yes, I do recall the Suez Canal crisis where Britain, France colluded to overthrow the Egyptian government, was it at that time? And all that came to ruin as well.
Yes, yes, I must try and understand it a bit more. I mean, I was aware of it, but I didn't answer the question about that when I was doing when I was doing my exam. But I think it's for geopolitical reasons. It's like, why Aden is so important, why Gibraltar and, the Suez is obviously important to a marine empire, and it's about, which port you control.
No,
I think. I'm just guessing.
no, I totally understand, but like I said, it would have made more sense for them to go straight for Istanbul, right? Which was where the capital of where modern day Turkey is, because that would have given access to the Black Sea, and they could have got behind the Germans quite easily. It was just that one chunk didn't really make that much sense to me as a war gamer, and that's where I always thought, putting my conspiracy theory hat on here. There's something very, quite strange about this relationship that we suddenly developed with Israel following the First World War.
Well, I mean, I know Aden was very important to the British because, well, Yemen, because of the port, I guess. So, in the same way that, Australia is important to the American marine empire because it needs to, dock its warships, somewhere on the way to disrupting the trade routes of the Chinese and the people who trade with China. But it's a very long entry, which I will read now that you pointed it out to me. But yes, I mean, I guess that was what made a European war become a world war.
I mean, the other thing, when we think about it, I mean, prior to the First World War, Britain was the maritime empire of the world.
Yes.
So, that's why when we talk about the different ports, it just always makes it, because when I'm moving the pieces on the gaming board, it doesn't always strike me why on earth would I have done that. So, from there, my little conspiracies seem to arise as to what on earth was that particular move at that time. But Britain does seem to have a very, very strange relationship with the Jews.
Well, I think people are kind of obsessed about Jews anyway. It's sort of like, well, I'm a Christian empire. I want to run Israel. I want Jews to be my subject people. I'm the Ottoman Empire. I want to, run Israel. And I think, both have in their time. And it's kind of a prestige colony, isn't it? And it's sort of like, oh, I protect the Jews, and it seems to be the narrative that Britain sacrificed its empire just to protect the Jews from the horrible Nazis, and then
Uh,
I mean, that's the narrative that we're trying to spread. I mean, I'm just old enough to have a history teacher who said, well, it wasn't like that. I mean, the British were, sick and tired of fighting stupid wars, and, there wasn't much of a gap between the First and the Second World War.
I taught immigration for the CAB for quite a while, and I used to talk about the legislation and the development of the immigration system in Britain. And it started with the Aliens Act, right?
Yes.
Which was primarily designed to keep the Jews out of Britain, especially the poor ones that were fleeing Eastern Europe at the time.
Yeah.
So this idea of loving the Jews, it just seems very, very contradictory. On one hand, you're doing something, you're grabbing Palestine during the First World War, but at the same time, we're creating the first ever immigration in the UK, which was to stop Jews coming here, unless they were very rich.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the location of Israel, in the middle of the Middle East, with its oil-rich Gulf states, I guess they want to keep an eye on the oil.
Well, it was like Biden recently said, if Israel hadn't been created, America would have created it.
Yes, that was what Biden was saying. If Israel didn't exist, we would have had to invent it. And
they did invent it, for fuck's sake. That was why they came in to help the British in the First World War. That was the plan all along. It wasn't Biden's plan, but that was America's plan from the very start. They were going to create Israel.
yes, because it is their, well, it is an American colonial outpost, and that is why it drives the Muslims crazy. You can imagine how the Americans would feel if Canada were communist and Mexico were Muslim. They'd just go crazy. They wouldn't be able to contain themselves.
Look how upset they got with Cuba. when Cuba was originally with Castro being a communist. Then the fear that Russia would then come and put nuclear weapons close to America.
Yes.
The thing is, Americans don't like it at all. It's like they don't want you to do anything in their sphere, right, or anywhere near their continent.
Yeah, because the rest of South America is their backyard, according to the Monroe Doctrine. And that was why they started the Spanish-American War, to kick out the Spanish.
So, but the thing is, the Monroe Doctrine only applies to the Americans. It doesn't apply to other countries. They don't respect anybody else's rights.
Well, no, I mean, because they think everywhere in the world is their backyard now.
They seem to have made that, and I think they were hoping they was going to progress their backyard into Russia, and that didn't seem to go as well as they planned. So I suppose the next best thing that these murderers can do is, I suppose, start the biblical conflict that everyone's been waiting for.
Yes, it's sort of like, if we can't control the world, we're just going to blow it up.
Exactly. Yeah. If I can't have it, neither can you. It's that kind of mentality almost. I mean, without saying it, I mean, we all know, how would you call it, Israel. Got a lot of money behind it, and because of its location, surrounded, as an island amongst the Arab countries, it had that sort of like the Iron Dome, full security, walls, etc. Do you think for 1 second they didn't know that they were going to be attacked by Hamas? America told them a week beforehand there was going to be attacked. The Egyptian Prime Minister told them they were going to be attacked. And apparently all the border guards weren't there, or they was doing something different, and the attack happened.
I think they wanted to be attacked so they can,
It was a false flag.
retaliate, in quotes.
It was a false flag. This was completely orchestrated and done by America.
Well, I mean, a lot of Orthodox Jews are, not happy with the situation.
No, I can imagine. A lot of normal people just want to go on with their lives, not get involved in America's sort of desire to become the unipolar god of this planet.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, all European leaders are vassal states, are leaders of vassal states of America. I mean, that explains why we all have the same social problems,
Yeah.
as the other. I mean, Europe
But
is a country occupied by America.
look at the rise of gay rights across the world. I mean, oh, last month there was a marriage, same-sex marriage in India.
No,
Yes,
it started there too.
that yes. They were Sikh, but they weren't allowed to do it in a temple. The entire communities have gone apeshit. I don't think there's anybody other than people who are being funded by outside agencies actually supporting this kind of thing. But there's a lot of Western money coming into India simply to destabilize the country.
Yeah, I think I remember a time when I was dealing with Indians who were complaining about feminism and their women being given free phones or something. It always starts with being given free phones.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, they give you something free but take something back in return. I'll tell you a funny story. When Indira Gandhi in the 70s was trying to promote contraception, they were grabbing people, men off the streets, giving them a vasectomy and a free radio. So it was have a vasectomy, you get a free radio.
But I think it was sort of fashionable at the time, with Mao and his one-child policy and all that.
Well, I think that even now, China saw the errors. I mean, it may have been populist once, or they thought it was populist, but they've now realised the error of their ways. That you don't start making such stupid ideas. They're trying to correct it now because they've now got a three-child. Is it a three-child policy?
Yeah, they wanted to free at least now,
It's
and
three,
the
three.
Chinese were, no, we can't, we don't
And
want
well,
to.
after creating generations of people with the mindset of one child, it's um, there's no wisdom in the how do you call it? Trying to tell people to limit the amount of children that you have.
I mean, I have a way of controlling the birth rate, but yeah, and I'm not going to say it to them. I mean, maybe I'll save it for later. But I have said it before. But yes, it's actually quite easy to control the birth rate by using laws to shame and encourage certain people. It can all be done using the law, but you have to change the entire system.
Yes.
You just want to encourage the right people to do the right kind of things and discourage the wrong kind, the behaviour that you think will harm society. And all you need to do is say that this is what you hope to do, that you want to do, and give reasons. I mean, I'm prepared to give reasons, nobody's prepared to discuss it with me.
I think the reason why it's difficult because, well, what alternative can I argue? I mean, all I can do, say, if I was to sort of oppose this ideology, is just argue pointless points, detracting really from what the entire thing means and what the function is. Now, it's like we've talked through various things, and yeah, okay, they're applicable in various different aspects, and yeah, I totally agree on that. But overall, we've got how do you call it, an ideal, which is the foundations of restarting civilization, where everybody adopts principles, call them the Noahide laws, secular Quranism, which is, I think, more preferable to you, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I think we do need that, and we need that, and you are bringing that to the table. I think the problem comes is with probably with the choice of names and everything. There's a lot of the moment you say Quran or whatever, people start to think Islam and all the negative things associated with it, and it detracts from your philosophy. At the end of the day, what we are, uh, where we stand, is at the point of destruction. Really, we
The
need
point of what? Sorry, I didn't catch that.
destruction.
Destruction. Okay. Uh huh.
Well, at the end of civilization, basically, if we carry on down this route, it's like what I'm saying with India, for instance, how India's got the hidden idolatry, even to the point now there was that same-sex marriage. Everything's being corrupted. If we continue down this path, then society is going to devolve. We're going to lose everything that our ancestors have created, and they gave us rules for a reason. We need to follow those rules.
Yes,
And
we need to
uh,
we need to talk to each other about what these rules might be for. And I
yes,
don't think it's that hard. And even if I don't get platformed by mainstream media, I think ordinary people can discuss these things with each other.
well, it's your book, for instance. I read your book. I
Thank you.
sorry, I said to my friend Jag, I says, Jag, I read this really good book. Next thing I know, can I borrow it? And it's gone off with him. I'm not sure who he's lent it to. So, in many ways, uh, it's people are sort of really coming across your ideas. I think it takes time. Uh, your book was published in August. I
I think June.
June, sorry, June. I think I bought it in August. So I mean, I think it's early days, but it's certainly out there because I mean, I've had conversations with my wife about it. Me and Jag have spoken about it. Yeah, I mean, I do try to, how do you call it, talk to other people about it, but really from the idea of like, I think as I put, I think the exact word I wrote was a deliciously thought-provoking philosophy, and it definitely is that. I think there's a lot there. I think that if we had a society that implemented these as its basis for morality, this would go a long, long way. I know that some of the religions have already got things like this in there, but having them as part of the state, which it's like the government is now, how would you call it? It's the government is now disseminating this information via its various institutions to the people, and the people are being brought up under these rules. That's going to go a long way to solving a lot of our problems. It's really at the end of the day, it's working through them and seeing them. How do we interpret this within our culture, and how do we create a law that will support this? But with like things like sexual uh, immorality, it'll be something that they'll have to do via their courts and legal systems. You're going to have laws that say, right, if you have sex outside of marriage, you're going to be punished. And at one point in this country, if you recall, it was called birching.
Yes.
We had birching in this country, tar and feathering, birching. And it's like we can criticize other cultures, but yes, I do prefer a system where if you do break these rules, you're going to get hurt. It's going to hurt. There has to be that sort of finality behind it. That it's not something that you're going to get a slap on the wrist for. You break these rules, there will be consequences, and you will be punished. And it's not a society being based on punishments, but the punishment is there as a deterrent. It's not something we want to be doing. But if you are going to break rules, then you have to be punished. And
Yes, I mean, I think most people would agree that some rules are needed.
okay, I mean, as children, right, we all do naughty things. So I am guilty of theft. I went to my local newsagents, as they were called, and I took something, and I was caught. He brought me home, and My dad showed me, right, what are consequences of breaking that uh, rule of theft. And I will tell you, that was one lesson that you don't
You never
unlearn.
forget.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I really think that none of this sort of namby pampering and, you know, holding your kids up as like wonderful things. They do something wrong, you put them right. Nowadays teachers are not even allowed to touch a child. I remember in my class in the 70s, every parent queued up and told our teacher, if my kid steps out of line, cane. We got the cane. And obviously at that time, our society I thought was a lot better. There wasn't just that, but it was a completely different system. We knew that when we did wrong things, we would be punished, and that was a good deterrent in not doing them. And yeah, bring back those kinds of punishments. That's why I think like slut shaming is a form of punishment. Because if you're going to be doing something like that, then yes, if the label fits, then you have to wear it.
Yeah. So really, it's not that hard. I mean, and it's already been there. It's not like we have to invent some
No.
kind of, machine that we don't have. It's been around for centuries. We just chose to forget about it.
You have, I mean, your entire philosophy is saying that we need to incorporate it into
The law.
exactly.
Because otherwise, it's just optional.
Yes. Hence, you're calling it secular.
Yeah,
This,
because secularism is basically these silly people in France saying, oh, French political establishment, we trust you to pass and repeal our laws. I mean, that is what it amounts to. The same thing with the Americans. Oh, Congress, we trust you to pass and repeal our laws. And they can pass and repeal any law. And that's what they do. They've changed the meaning of marriage. They've totally inverted the social system, and at the expense of men. It's really at the expense of men. I mean, forget the races because they're all subject to the same law. So I think fundamentally it's some kind of what some people call a shit test. It's like, this has happened. You're going to do something about it? No. Let's see how you respond to this other worst thing that I'm going to do to you. Oh, no response. Let's carry on and make it worse until something gives, I guess.
I think in the end, the only thing that's going to give is if we continue down this road, society is going to collapse. So the
Yes, and
solution,
the sad thing is that, I mean, I was talking earlier in the other stream. It's that these angry or apathetic, hopeless young men who complain about their government. They don't do anything much apart from complain and do what they call what's called shit post and get themselves into trouble. They probably don't have jobs, and they don't seem to have the support and advice of the previous generation of men. That seems to be their problem. They've been utterly abandoned by their fathers, uncles, male relations. They haven't, nobody prepared to tell them anything. And even if they were prepared to tell them anything, they'd ignore them and be rude about them, I can imagine.
the thing here is, it's like, I don't know if you agree with what I'm going to say next, but I think the problem is when we start putting women into the equation. It's like, for instance, in a work or any other environment, we should not be working together. There shouldn't be women bosses or women subordinates or that kind of thing. Men work more efficiently as men, and we're better off without that female influence. I'll give you an example. If you put 50 men in a room, by the end of the day, a complete pecking order has been established. After that, there's going to be no problems, and everybody knows where they stand, what's going to happen, and we get on with it. When you start putting women in there and they're demanding all this kind of equality and they're trying to be alpha, or that they think that they can be equal to men. That entire sort of animalistic balance goes. Men just need to be men and get on with it. So an office full of men is going to be a lot more efficient than having a mixed office. That's in my personal opinion, because men know who we are. Once you've got the leader, you've got the pecking order sorted out, we just get on with it. Those pecking orders can't be established when you keep throwing women into the mix. This is a detriment for our society. It's like, yes, women can have the same job, but maybe a different office.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be this separation where women need to get away from us men so we can be basically men. Our biological
And tell jokes without being accused of all sorts.
yeah, we're competitive people. You can't have the same kind of competition with a woman. We've got that male aggression. We size each other up. Everybody, it just works a whole lot differently. When we put women in there, that balance goes. I think everything just turns to shit. It'd be more better if society jobs were run by men and jobs were done by women, but separately, not together. Maybe some jobs, yeah, like nurses and doctors, they do sort of complement each other. But I'm saying generally as a whole, it's like even in an army unit, there is no purpose having a female in your squad. That male testosterone that is what defines us as men. How the hell does that work with a woman competing against us? That's not how we've been designed. We're designed to be competitive and display certain behaviours towards people of our own gender. And the wonderful outlets for that is amongst your male friends, male members of your family, male members of your community.
Yes, who understand and who won't be offended.
Well, it's a chance for us to become men.
Mm-hmm. And to know what you're supposed to do, because it's important to women too that men know what they're supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be behaving.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Because I think we forget that in that kind of environment, we're learning so much more from those who are sort of older than us. And we go by their examples and behaviours. Like everybody wants to follow the leader, don't they? And if that person's worthy enough, they become an example to which you sort of like act.
Yes, and fundamentally, it's men following the orders of women. We'll just raise so many questions. It's like, well, what's wrong with them? Why can't they find their own, alpha male leader? Why do they have to be, following the orders of this woman? And I'm thinking of Thatcher again. And then they make all these jokes that, Maggie was the only proper man in her cabinet and, stuff like that. But I mean, although
She was a complete
I admired her, she was the beginning of the end, wasn't she?
Well, she was the product of feminism. I mean, her husband Dennis was a complete simp. She lost control of her son. Remember all the scandals her son Mark got into during the 70s and 80s. I mean, as a mother, yes, she followed the feminist philosophy. But I mean, the thing is, I've always personally supported Maggie, but I still don't think that a woman in that role.
Yes, because then it laid the way open for Theresa May, and then it got worse, Liz Truss. It's just going to get worse.
Well, they're non-entities. I mean, even we can be critical about Thatcher, and I can say, well, yeah, she's a woman, and maybe that wasn't appropriate psychologically for me to have a woman as a leader. But everyone after her that's come, they've all been totally and utterly useless. If you look at all the sort of like Parliament in waiting, the left wing, Have you seen their values? It's
I
like
don't want to.
exactly. I mean, the thing is, like, no matter my criticism of Margaret Thatcher as a mother, she did a lot for this country, and these people aren't even a shadow, a speck of what she actually is, and they're nothing compared to that. None of them have got that political capital. The only way you can say is that they don't make politicians like they used to. At one particular point, there were left-wing politicians that I would love to sit and talk to. Maybe I mean there was one I totally admired, Tony Benn, even though I've never ever in my life voted Labour. I've never saw Labour as a man's party. For me, it was like the Conservatives were a men's party, but now they're a party of castrated imbeciles.
Yeah. I mean, they don't even work for the work. They don't even represent the working classes anymore. The Labour Party, I mean. The Lovey Party, not the Labour Party.
Well, the Labour Party, not one of them can say what a bloody woman is. They're all dodging around the issue, and it's like, and you want to be in power. Actually, you are going to be in fucking power. Because the Tories have, well, put it this way, I'm a lifelong Tory voter, but I'd never again. Hell or high water, I would never, ever vote for the Tories again.
I mean, there's nothing particularly virtuous in being born middle class. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, one of the things that I do propose is we should be a one-party state, and with the principle of governing in a national interest, and therefore it would be in our interest to have a moral system that supports marriage. I mean, that would be a start. If we could agree on that, that would be a start.
I will have to turn around and say, on that point, I agree, because I don't believe in these two-party systems. And I believe in having one party, but a party that has got full accountability to the people. It's not something that it's like someone to sell us the opposite. Here's more sweets, or this person is going to give us more sweets, etc. So, in your sense of like a one-party state, that is a better option than having two options. Because with the two options, I only feel like they're there to distract us.
Yes, because the policies never change.
Yeah. The policies never change because the same people are controlling it. Washington. Whatever they want is going to be done. So no matter whether you vote for Labour or now if you vote for the Conservatives, it's not what you want them to do. It's what Washington wants them to do, and that's what they're going to do. This is why when Ukraine almost signed a peace agreement with Russia, very, very early stage, Boris Johnson went running over there, didn't he? His entire fucking country turned into shit, and he thought he was more important for him to go and say, no, don't.
I think Boris had a suitcase full of money to give to Zelensky, didn't he, to stop him from signing the peace agreement. There were jokes about that.
I probably thought it was bags of cocaine, to be personal, because they're all okay. But yeah, because I mean, the thing is that it's just like completeness. I don't. I think as far as I'm concerned, the Tory party is now completely, for me, have finished. We've not got a good leader. Good leaders have gone, and there's not many people left. And the alternatives that we've got, they aren't really men either. I think what we need really is a new leader.
I think we need a new system.
A new leader would maybe usher in a new system.
Well, I think we just need to say that we need a new system. And the thing is, the awful thing is we don't even want to talk about it. I say things like, oh, Christianity is kaput. It's like, well, the response I get is, oh, I'm not Christian, I don't care. And then I say, liberalism is kaput. And they say, I'm not liberal, I don't care. conservatism is kaput. I don't care. I'm not conservative. It's like, well, you know, I mean, this is what happens because nobody even, is democracy kaput? Well, that might be a bit of a more of a question mark.
I think democracy is completely kaput. I mean, if you look across Europe,
Every time you vote, it gets worse.
well, it doesn't really matter what you vote. It still gets worse. But have you noticed that how do you call it? That the curtain that showed you the Wizard of Oz was running things actually dropped, especially when every country started saying the same thing. Every country across Europe, they're all singing the same mantra. Whatever Washington says, they just keep repeating it. And it's becoming more and more evident absolutely every single day.
Yeah, I know a Dutchman who said Europeans don't even bother learning their own European language properly. They're only interested in learning English. The better to communicate with their American overlords.
Well, he's correct about our American overlords, because they certainly are the ones that hold this entire world in their hands. Their stupidity decides which direction that we're going to be going. I mean, in many, many ways, I would like to see the Americans come to some kind of sense. I think America's actually heading towards a civil war anyhow. Things are not good in their country. They've got no good politicians. And I think everybody accepts that the elections are rigged as well. So there's going to be no change.
Well, I mean, that I think is fundamentally the problem of the birth rate thing, because I think that there are quite a few of them, and they know that they're being ripped off, they're being lied to. Even if Trump wins, it's going to be stolen again. And the thing is, they won't do anything about it because the average age of America is so high. It was 40 the last time I looked it up. I mean, can you imagine if the average age of America was 80? The government would get away with anything, because 80-year-olds are not going to do anything to fight anything. And 40-year-olds are, well, maybe too comfortable, too afraid of losing stuff to do anything. So revolutions tend to be started by countries with an average age of 20.
Well,
and I think that was that was the average age of Iran when it had their Islamic Iranian Revolution.
What, in 79?
I believe so.
Right. Yes. Yes, I think by that time the younger generation had seen their parents. They'd seen. I mean, like, the parents would have taught them as well exactly how America installed the Shah of Iran, exactly how America took all the resources. I mean, prior to the Iranian Revolution, from what I recall from old videos, Iran was quite a very modern place. Then,
yes, with women dressed in the fashions of the 50s.
Totally, yes. Mm. Yep. Then it was America's interference in their democratic system and their installation of the puppet Shah of Iran that actually caused the decline and created the right environment for a revolution. You're saying it was the 20-year-olds, and I can understand that, because the younger, how do you call it, they're driven by that, not only the testosterone, but the words of, how do you call it, God. It's that righteous fight. And you're quite correct, it can only be done by the young.
Directed by the mature and experienced. But the sort of generation gaps where lots of young men have never met their father. They don't take to authority well, and that. I mean, that kind of already explains why you need to have a religion, because at least with a religion, you have elders and families are whole, and the young are supposed to listen to their elders, or at least have the resources and the advice of the previous generation. But now it's like they're expected to what's the word, rediscover electricity on their own, and they're getting stupider and more degenerate and more easily distracted.
Well, what I tend to find is it's more difficult to sort of explain the right way to people who really think that they're already right.
Yeah, I mean, I try to explain, things from a logical point of view, but the obstacle I face is like, yeah, I don't like it. I don't feel like it. I don't want to, and you can't make me.
Well, yes,
That's yeah.
well, but it's a bit like, how would you say, it's like putting forward a new, how do you call it, sort of, I don't know, it's quite difficult to sort of explain.
Were you
Yeah,
trying to suggest a solution, or some
I,
explain some idea?
no, I think I was just like drawing an analogy between something that you said, but I lost the thought, so I'm sorry about that.
Well, let me know when it comes back to you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and the young are, well, I think they're afraid to hope for a better future because they're frightened of being disappointed. That's a feeling I get with the young. They dare not even hope. Everything is just a joke to them because they can't even bring themselves to take themselves seriously, and nobody takes them seriously anyway.
That's
So
the
I guess
problem.
that's why they just meme and talk nonsense, and nobody respects them, and I think it's a kind of vicious cycle of their women thinking, well, you're so useless, we'll have to vote for the pro-immigration parties, so we'll at least have men to marry, men who are prepared to marry us even for our passports, because you won't marry us. You prefer to be gay and transgender. I think, fundamentally that is the unspoken dialogue between men and women, and old and young.
I think the situation is it becomes more and more corrupted the more and more we allow uh, bizarre sexual behaviours to become acceptable in our society. I mean, I'm going to sound like completely religious, but God created man and woman. There's a whole function behind this, not only with humans, but with the whole of humanity. It's to go back and to start corrupting that ideal. But what trying to say, well, it's okay. You can be gay, you can be bisexual, you can be, or you can change your gender. This is wrong. It's almost like you're teaching somebody the exact opposite of what is right.
Yes. Now
And
that is exactly what they're doing.
but they've got the perfect people in the West, because if you think about it, in the last 30 years, most of the Western families are lone parent families. I mean, either they're totally brought up with a single mother, with a mother as the only parent, in the household, or the fathers have left when they were young. So, children like that, without that sort of balance and that guidance, are going to be left to harmful influences, such as ideologies where you're allowed to have sex with the same gender, or you're allowed to sort of change your gender. Because the thing is, when do we draw the line?
Oh,
Um,
now, you
well,
know,
in terms of Richard, did you know that? What was it? I don't know if what the word is. Sex with animals isn't banned in Finland. It's not against the law. And
Bestiality.
yeah,
Is the death penalty in the Torah, but not even mentioned in the Quran?
well, I mean, I don't. I think death penalties are appropriate in some actions, but I think punishments are definitely required with some forms of behaviour, and it would be quite good to actually have a set of rules that people do follow. And like I said, those rules seem to exist in religion, but less and less of people seem to be following those rules. It would be nice that in order to support the religions that are trying to promote this, that the government sort of incorporates into, the state incorporate within its legal system, sort of definitions of or rules that can be sort of applied to for the benefit, for instance, benefit for humanity. And without being offensive to anyone, when I'm saying like homosexuality, for instance, I don't mean we should ban to people like that. No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying what we teach, that we don't teach or promote it. However, if a person, what he chooses or she chooses to do in the privacy of their own home, within reason, is nothing to do with us. I'm just on about, when I use that as an example, it simply has, I'd rather have a society where I don't have to sort of say to my child that this is one of the options. You know, from
Yeah.
there's no options, man, woman. That's it. I'm not going to. I don't want you to go to school. Come back to me with this new idea, Dad. Can I go out with Tom tomorrow? Because it's not that. That's just uh, a seed of destruction.
Well, that's the thing. The government's voice will always be louder than the parent's voice, because a child would instinctively know that, well, school is more powerful than mum and dad. And the prevailing culture, the mainstream culture, is more powerful than our minority culture. And that's why it's so important that mainstream culture should be the correct form of culture, but it is not. It is the opposite of what it should be. And men, because they don't know their role anymore, are afraid to point this out or to discuss it with each other.
I think that's a generational thing. You'll find most people my generation will you have similar ideas to what I am. But I have noticed that the younger the people are, for instance, when I say Zarina's age group, when I talk to that kind of age group, they've got completely different values and think completely different to, say, people of my age, or even those from around, say, mid 30s onwards.
Yeah, I think, I mean, my discussions with Zarina have, she's basically saying, what you have in mind is far too harsh and, you know, too painful, too harsh, and,
It's Rita, bless her heart. She's just having a knee-jerk reaction to the word secular Quranism. I mean, I think if she sat down and actually read the entire thing and sort of maybe took a minute to think, oh, hang on, as a solution, let me mentally just apply it practically. Now, the idea with solutions, these are not, like for you alone. These are principles that we're going to apply to a whole of society. Will it bring a benefit? What alternative have we got to the current decay and the corruption that we're facing? I
well,
think
it
if
will produce more marriageable men for women who want to become married mothers. So that is, the benefit that, should be presented to them and explained to them. But I think a lot of people just can't see reason. It's like, I don't like it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. They can't really sit down and have are you right in thinking that? Is it logical to do that? They don't seem to have that ability to use their powers of reason. Or even to say, well, if what I believe in is not correct because it it relies on false information, and it's obviously untrue, then I have to change my ways. I mean, you know, and I guess a lot of people just can't bring themselves to admit that they've been wrong, or maybe you don't even have to blame them for being wrong. You were misled, you were tricked, you were lied to.
I think that is the problem. I think her generation have been tricked, misled, and lied to. You know, it's they all seem to have this very individual approach to everything. It's a very individual situation. Whereas I suppose the older one, it was more about the community, more about the collective, more about the whole. So there is that difference that seems to have grown within that generation.
I think it's also to do with, living with mum and mum and dad kind of ganging up on you and together saying, look, you've got to listen to us. And we, as your parents, say, X, and that's what but if you just have, one parent, you don't have that authority.
No, I think two parents are very important. I mean, I can't think of a worse thing that would have happened to me than other than my parents separating. I mean, it's something that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. It's something that I would personally find very, very difficult. Uh, the ideal situation is you need that balance because a mother can't take on the role of the father, and a father can't take on the role of the mother. We need both role models because mums and dads reflect the rest of society to us. Uh, Mums also are going to have a different approach. Our behaviour is governed by hormones, which may or may not make us emotional or whatever. Different hormones are going to have different kinds of behaviour. So your mum and dads are going to be very, very different. I think boys who are brought up with their mothers, like you were saying earlier, don't get their role models. They only see that sort of female aspect of it.
They
And
imitate it. They
yes,
imitate this sort of victimhood thing, and it doesn't work for men. It might work for a woman to cry and, look pathetic and say she's been hurt, but it doesn't work for men.
no,
And when women see men do that, it just fills them with disgust.
yes, yes. Yeah, I think a man crying is a very undesirable trait, and it's something that you really wouldn't want to witness. It's making that person, how would you call it, not look good. I mean, I'm not saying that they shouldn't cry. People cry. We cry in private. We don't.
Yes, and but the
Yeah,
thing is, women want a protector. They don't want a victim,
no.
and that is why men should never. That's why men need a stiff upper lip and never be
Yes.
seen to
Yeah.
be complaining, because it's like, we want somebody to protect us. We don't want to nurse you.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
And that's why it's so important for men and women to understand their gender roles. And even if they don't want to play it, it's like, I really feel I'm more like a man than a woman or whatever. It's like, well, that's the reason for them. If you want to marry, then you have to say, oh, I'm a girl. I'd be such a good mom and I can cook and look and sing and whatever. That's the purpose of gender roles. But
Yes.
since most people don't marry, they don't care about them. I mean, that's the reason.
Yes. They put other things. They think other things are more important, but they've got it all the wrong way round. I've tried to explain this before. Sort of comparing sort of nieces in this country to say nieces who are born in India. The ones that are born in India, right? Yeah, they marry around the age of 18. And most wonderfully, by the time that they're 20, 21, they've had three kids. They stop having babies. Within a few years, their children are old enough to take care of themselves. And you've got your extended family helping you bring them up. And at that particular age, the woman's fulfilled her function in life. She's become a mother. She's free to go and pursue what career she wants within reason. If they want to be, be an artist or, you know, be a scientist or whatever, they can do that. But to put your career first is absolutely the wrong way round, because by the time you've got your career sorted out, you're not going to be biologically able to produce children anymore. Producing a child is very, very important, so that when you sort of hit your mid 20s, you know, that function has virtually been fulfilled. You've brought your children up. They're going to be at an age where they can be self-sufficient, and with the help of extended family and your community, you're
Yeah,
free
yeah,
to.
help you run your business.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what my niece Anu did. She now runs the business of her husband, but she got married at the age of 18. She had three sons, and now she's quite happy working. Her sons go to school, and she's running a successful business. And I think that's the example I always give when I say to people, to other nieces, that is a good example. That's the way it should be done. But then again, a lot of people in India do that. You just find that within the West, there seems to be this idea that no, my career comes first, and by the time they suddenly realise that it's the wrong way round, it's too late. They're not going to have
Yeah,
any
yeah. So,
kids.
so there's the smart genes die with them. I mean, earlier I was telling you about, these successful, attractive, charismatic men who can always, find a string of women prepared to, go on a date with them and spend the night with them, and then they never settle because they think, well, why should I, put up with just one woman and pay for the kids? And it's like, well, the smart ones are actually dying childless, leaving the stupid ones breeding.
Yeah. Have you seen the film Idiocracy?
Yes, so funny.
Well, the thing is, it was a comedy when I first saw it. Now I'm starting to think it was prophecy.
Yes, it was prophecy, wasn't it? They're
But
gonna
yeah,
ban it soon, I bet. Gonna
they,
ban it.
they did their best to try to stop people seeing it. I mean, it only became a hit when it hit the video market, but I don't think it did very well at the box office. They didn't want to promote that film, but it's one of the best films from the 90s, definitely. And the sad part about it is that's exactly the way society went after that film was released.
Yes, yes. Well, I suppose we can kind of, invite our, nieces and our nephews to come on over and watch a movie with us. That one. I'm bearing in mind that I have to be more entertaining. I was told in the previous stream that I'm too serious and too intellectual, and I have to entertain people a bit more so they warm to me and rubbish like that.
No, you just take people as you find them. I suppose if somebody wants to talk like hard critical philosophy, you'll accommodate them. If they want to talk theology, you'll accommodate them. If you just want to ask questions, you do. You're quite flexible in that way. I don't think you're any one type of interviewer or person who discusses things. I think you are very, very flexible. And the thing at the end of the day is you have a right sense of humour.
Thank you. But yeah, I'm not going to be platformed because I've been banned, on mainstream media, and I just need to break on through to the other side, as that song goes.
Well, I suppose basically it's beating the algorithm. I mean, once you, once your message is out there and it starts to sort of like grow, passed on to other people,
Yeah.
it's going to, I suppose, affect and reach more people. I
Well,
mean, even from this small end of town, like says my friend Jag, I've discussed it with him. I've discussed it with my wife. But the main people I was talking. So
well, I thank you, because you know, I think I like to think that secretly people sort of go on about it because I think that horrible idea of hers. Is it really the only idea? Is it really, asking everybody? And I think that would help too.
No, I mean, the thing is, I have tried with Serena, but she's not really into sort of wanting to discuss these concepts with me. So,
I think, okay, I can tell you of this kind of achievement that I have. People just really hate my ideas, and then years later, they say it themselves. Like they just repeat the thing that they said they hated a few years ago, like it was their own idea, you know.
yeah.
And I noticed it once, and I thought, oh well, that's nice. I never confronted her about it, but it was just nice to know that it has to be somehow, kind of rejected but internalized and subconsciously accepted, and then it just comes out again, but as their own idea, you know.
I think discussing it with people, other people discussing it is going to create a sort of living, growing entity, and it's something like it's quite an interesting topic overall. Like I said in the beginning, where or you're providing a solution, right? Whereas my idea was for that solution was religion, but you're saying, well, no, hang on, rather than religion, why not have this sort of secular approach of divine law? So, on that particular basis, I'm finding within myself to think, well, yeah, this is a very good idea. I mean, because you're not telling me to become a Muslim, you're not telling me to become anything. What you're saying is, right, let's have a society where we've got these rules which are based upon divine rules. So because it's based upon divine rules, if we all accept that, then these are not going to be broken, these are going to be followed. And we're going to build a society based upon these principles.
Yes, and also to well, point a few fingers at a few religious groups who haven't been doing what they were chosen to do, and they have no answer. And if only the Muslims would kind of do what I want, they can all be going up to all these Orthodox rabbis and say, "Oh, tell us about the Noahide laws, and why don't you rank the four Gentile religions and tell us which one is the most, and that would be just so easy to do." But then a lot of these Muslims are, well, anti-Semites, and they don't think no, the Noahide laws are legitimate, and they don't want to give Jews their credit for codifying the Noahide laws. But it's actually a very useful that you can use against Jews. It's like, you're supposed to be teaching us that. You haven't done that, have you? It's not too late for you to rank the four Gentile religions. And, before you get too smug, you Muslims, you haven't been obeying this verse in the Quran, chapter 18, verse 4, that says you have to admonish those who claim that God has begotten a son. So these Muslims haven't been following their own rules either. And obviously, for people who don't quite believe in God, idolatry has the effect of depriving you of the opportunity of following the correct moral system, which I say is based on the Quran.
Yeah, I understand that, but mainly because when you actually look at the Noahide laws, I've not read the Quran in any way, shape, or form, but the essay that I have read, uh, the actual laws, do not worship idols, do not murder, steal, all these things that are forbidden are sort of implied within that essay. So, you know, it is part of Islam. It originates from Judaism. They both originate from the same source. They're the same people from the same area. So you can call them almost like sister religions. So they call themselves the children of the book. So I can see the similarities. The problem comes, like you says, Claire, not Muslims not following it, the same with Hindus not following it, and the same with Christians not following it. These teachings are there, and if truth be known, for instance, if tomorrow the government says we are going to incorporate secular Quranism. I would no, no, seriously, I wouldn't have a problem because these are the things we already believe in.
Yes,
Right. So
yes.
these are the values I was brought up with. Okay, we're giving them a different name or anything, but once we start breaking them down, this is what our religions tell us. So I've not got a problem. And if we had a government, a one-party government that says, well, this is what I'm going to base my political philosophy on, well, that's a hell of a lot better than the Conservative and the Labour option we have at the moment, haven't we? As a political philosophy, it's a lot more simpler, less bullshit, and we're straight to the point.
Well, yes, I think what drives people crazy is that the laws keep changing and it's always changing for the worse. And if you have a finite list of rules, life becomes more predictable, and then you feel like, well, if I do X, I will get B, I will get Y. And that is what makes people embark on, long journeys, burdensome enterprises. It'll make them do the hard things that they are not doing because they think the world is about to end in a nuclear holocaust. I bet, a lot of people are just kind of not doing anything because they think the world is going to end. And so I think, this sort of, silly messianic feeling that people are getting is not helpful. Because like, oh, I don't need to do anything. The world is going to end. The Messiah is going to come, or the world is going to end in some horrible way. And Vincent Bruno has been kind of saying, well, you should give some hocus pocus and mumbo jumbo because the stupid people love it. And I was thinking, maybe I should just sort of say, like, I'm the Messiah substitute. The real one is not coming, so you'll have to make do with me, and this is what I have to say. I don't know.
No, I saw that the post on Twitter where you said the Messiah's not coming. You're gonna have to make do with me. So I did find that genuinely amusing.
But I think people are paralysed into
Well, the thing is,
inaction.
well, the thing is, okay, let's forget everything. You can wait for the Messiah, whatever. And a good idea has not only a solution. I think that's a solution to Britain, right? If we remove the Conservatives and the Labour Party and a one party that started its entire sort of secular legal system and structure based upon the 7 no-hide laws, that would probably be more of a solution and a better option than any of the ones that we are facing currently. If you don't put religion into the fix, and even with the problem with religion is Hinduism's not up to it because we don't really convert people to our religion. Neither does Judaism. It only leaves Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam, and Christianity is what dying. So is Buddhism. Unfortunately, the only religion that leaves everyone is available is Islam. And I have suggested to Serena that she actually convert to Islam. I know how.
We'll have to find her a nice Muslim man. Or somebody prepared to convert to it.
No, I think she's got an ideal man, but I think Serena will convert. I really think that eventually she's going to come to her senses and realise, well, she will understand the logic at one particular point as to why these people keep saying it. Oh, my uncle's been saying it, Callie's been saying it, Claire's been saying it. Now, all the different people that she's actually had good interviews with, like Jana for you, or Smalta Jana, and a few other people, really she had positive interviews with them. And she's understanding that people are coming in trying to sell you rubbish. There is something behind it. I mean, the problem is also that 90% of all the bad Muslims, the ones that sort of misbehave, are actually giving Islam a bad name. Because I am, starting to find that even though there is a lot of Muslims that are not ideal, it's not because of the religion; it's because they're not following it.
Well, yes, because I think Islam without Sharia is a car without an engine, so it
Claire, you
can't
can't.
work.
You can't. This is why I argue so much with Serena when she tells me about New Age beliefs. I explained to them that you can't have anything which hasn't got these fundamental principles: theology, Sharia, philosophy, then finally mysticism. These four things make up fundamentally a religion. You simply can't start making the rules up, and these are sort of developed in various stages as man's morality increases, or but with the instructions of his parents on how he should behave, or in your case, being instructed within the no hide laws into your behaviour.
Yeah. And there has to be a kind of track record of, oh, we've been doing it for centuries and it's worked for us, and we're so powerful and so ancient, or whatever, and that will also make people follow it.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. But really, at the end of the day, it's none of this is about making anyone powerful or to conquer others. What you're proposing, really, Claire, is a peaceful society where I don't have to lock my door.
Yes.
A society that I don't have to worry about my daughter going to the shops. You know, all the things that you're saying is a world I want to live in.
A
I,
low tax, low crime, low regulation society because people know how to control themselves.
people did do that once, but it's all being corrupted. But humanity seems to be going backwards. So on that particular principles, that's the kind of world I want to live in. And I know that Islam, Hinduism, Judaism offer it, but like I said, Serena, you can't make this stuff up. You need to follow a proper religion, and Sharia is the most important aspect of any religion. It is our rules. This is what we have to be. Theology is great. That's our belief system. Philosophy is the airy fairy chatting about it. Sharia is what defines us. This is where we are the moral person, when we don't kill, don't steal, don't do any of these things because they were given to us by God. And that's one a fundamental aspect that no New Age religion actually has. Hence, I find them worthless. But they actually are worthless.
Well, because really, it doesn't even, okay, you don't even have to be a noble group. I mean, you could be just, okay, a criminal gang, a protection racket or something, but you would have a purpose and you would have rules about what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to behave towards each other, and this is what defines you as a group. And obviously religion is much better than that, and much older and more powerful, and that is kind of a evidence of how it works, that you have these religious groups that have outlasted empires. And for the Jews it's like, oh, we've been around since the ancient Egyptians, and the Christians can, okay, they obviously try to culturally appropriate the God of Israel, and maybe Muslims can say, but we did it better because we actually have a book of rules, and we say it's from Allah, and it's easy to follow, and it's clearly expressed, and we've been around for 1400 years. It's some sort of objective feature that you can say, oh yeah, we can't argue with you about that. I mean, you have been around, and maybe people will eventually understand that you can't even exist as a country, a society, if you don't have children, right? I mean, that's a bottom line. I mean, forget the avoiding pork and avoiding gambling thing. You won't exist as a country if you don't have children to produce the next generation.
Yep. Well, that's the basic fundamental biological principle upon which all life runs upon. If you don't breed, you go extinct. And
And we are being forced to believe in this thing that will make us go extinct. And our evil government is trying to make us believe in it and wanting us to go extinct. And do what afterwards, God knows.
um, well, there's lots of conspiracy theories about that. Yeah, I can certainly tell you. But yeah, it does look like it. They seem to be succeeding. It makes no logical sense why such abhorrent ideologies are being sort of forced upon us, where we're told we can accept mentally ill people who think that they can change gender, or people who have, how would you call it, perverted sexual desires, that somehow we're all normal.
Yes, and that they should rule over us. And ultimately, I don't think it even matters whether, they're evil or if they're mad or if they're stupid, because, well, the effect is the same. I mean, the consequence is the same. And I guess I am the eternal optimist for thinking it can easily be sorted if only somebody were prepared. I mean, somebody in the establishment who, has a bigger channel than me. There's lots of people, but they won't do it. All these YouTubers who have bigger channels, who seem to take themselves seriously, they won't talk about the thing that is the only solution. It's not like, that all these competing solutions, none of them have anything, that they can even explain properly.
That's because the narrative's controlled. The YouTubers know they put you on their channel, they're going to get demonetized. They're going to get punished. If they do this. So they're fearful in that particular kind of sense. But you will find there's other people out there who don't really care about being monetized or not monetized. So, I think you'd be quite lucky. You will find people who will want to sort of talk to you about this.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, I think that all the bigger channels would be kind of warned. Like, if you even mention her thing, that will be the end of your channel. And they're thinking, okay, well, I don't need to mention her channel, do I? If I want to continue, grifting. And I think, fundamentally it is corruption. People lying to themselves and thinking, low standards is enough to get them by. Because, obviously, if you don't believe in God, then you won't be thinking about the afterlife, and you'll just be thinking, about the next income, the next month, the week when you will get paid, whether, or the next sexual encounter, and you're not prepared to think of, what society is going to be like after you are dead, because you won't be around to suffer it. And I think because most people think like that, they just don't see the point of, making any sacrifice to support a principle, if they have one. And that, I think, is really the fundamental difference between believing in an afterlife and not believing in one at all. Because, if you don't believe, then you just don't see any point in making any sacrifices, because you don't get any reward for, making those sacrifices. Because I think it's sort of quite easy to understand, like you have one army, well, you have two armies, one believes in God and the other doesn't. The numbers are equal, the military equipment are equal, the battle tactics are equal. Obviously the one that isn't afraid to die will fight more bravely and win the battle. And so I think ultimately, some belief in God is required, but also I think people are they kind of want to believe in God. They just need the government to say it's okay. We're not going to laugh at you if you believe in God.
Yes, we need the government to say that we can have Christmas back, not Winter Festival, and all the stupid words that they like they give us. But yeah, wouldn't you say, Claire, at the end of the day, religion in itself is distraction, especially because it's like being a supporter of a football team. You sort of miss the point of the game. It's
Well,
like I'm a Hindu, right? And I believe in the same God that the Jews, the Muslims, Christians, anybody who worships one God, then really we've reached the same point, haven't we?
I think it's the mechanism, isn't it? It's sort of, um, yes, we may believe in one God, but our way of reaching him or obeying his laws is better than all the others. So in a way, you can say it's some kind of evolutionary strategy. It's like, yes, okay, we all support marriage, but which one of us will do better? And then, or it could be we're all secular Quranists now, all the countries of the world, but the best one will be the one that follows it, most fairly and reasonably, or whatever. And the whole idea of all these different religions is to make us see which one works best. And it seems to be it's still the Jews, because everybody's still complaining about the Jews. Even the people with the three global empires, i.e. the Christians, are still complaining about the Jews. So there's something going on there that we have to work out.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time.
and
The
and
Jews, apart from being the chosen people, were also like the most hated group as well, chosen to be the most hated group by the Gentiles all across
well,
Europe with expulsions from various countries over time. So Judaism, or the Jews rather, have always had a really bad rap. One wonders why.
well, I suppose they are envied, really, and it used to be, well, why do you want to envy them? You don't want to live like them, do you? And then after Jewish emancipation from the Napoleonic period, the Jews were basically told that, oh, you can be one of us, we're not going to be mean to you anymore. And then they were also allowed to keep their Jewish identity without being observant. And I think that increased anti-Semitism, because I mean the Gentiles would say, well, who, why are you any better than us? You don't even observe the Sabbath. You don't even, do the things you're supposed to do as a Jew, and you still get the privileges and whatever. And I think fundamentally, Jews present a conundrum because they won't actually follow their laws, because it's so harsh, isn't it? 36 capital punishments. Breaking the Sabbath is death. But my little idea about dealing with the Jews is like, we're going to put all the Jews on the register, and if you break the Sabbath, if you do any of the 36 capital punishments, then you get struck off the register and you're no longer a Jew. And we're just going to keep doing that with the rabbis keeping the register, and then eventually the only Jews you get are the observant Jews, and you don't get the secular Jews spoiling it for everyone else, because they're the ones who have privilege without responsibility. Because I think when Gentiles complain about Jews, it is always the secular Jews that they're complaining about. I mean, I think most people who hate Jews have never met a rabbi or have never spoken to one anyway,
Well, it's difficult to sort of imagine vilifying an entire nation or entire group of people just based upon their religious background.
But I think a lot of people do. I mean, I suppose you're all the same, and then I try to remind people, like, actually white people can be vilified for exactly the things that they vilify Jews for. It's like, yeah, you do control the world, don't you? You are in charge of the banking, aren't you? So I don't think if everybody decided to gang up against, white people, they can say, oh, we never did those things. We didn't start 2 world wars. We didn't, It's like, yeah, you've been doing it for quite a while. I
Well,
mean, they have
it,
taken over the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is why we've got things like the word anti-Semitic. Like to sort of say something negative about them, right, uh, is a form of criticism.
Yeah, and then they're trying to obscure all these discussions about, Zionism. So they're basically said they're trying to push for anybody who complains about Zionism is all should be classified as an anti-Semite, and
Then
then
I disagree with that one totally. I think there's a distinction between Zionism and Judaism. You know, it's like Zionism. It's, without going into conspiracy theories, you know, it's a different entity. It's the entity that is in power. You know, when we say
yes.
that, you know, the Jews are in power, no, they're not. Zionists, Zionism is in power, and that is not all of Judaism.
Yeah, because actually, there are Jews who are anti-Zionists, like Neturei Carter,
Yeah,
and there were Jews who said, no, no, we don't want a homeland because the moment they give us a homeland, they'll tell us to go to it. And we're happy in, America or Europe or wherever they were. And for kind of reasons of self-interest, they didn't want a homeland because they didn't want to go to live in Israel, which would be full of Jews or Arabs who wanted to kill them. So I guess it was but the many reasons for people to. For Jews even to be anti-Zionist,
totally.
and also you can be a Nazi and be a Zionist because a few people got into trouble for I'm thinking of Ken Livingstone for saying well Hitler wasn't a Zionist because obviously he wanted somewhere to put his unwanted Jews, and that was Israel.
Well, there
So
was
you
an
can be
agreement.
you can
There was
hate
an
Jews and be a Zionist.
there was an agreement with Hitler and Israel to actively deport the Jews to Israel.
Yes, the transfer agreement, the Havara agreement.
Yes. So,
But you see, they don't want us talking about it because it's sort of like, well, if Hitler wanted to kick them out, then he can't have meant to exterminate them. They don't
yeah,
want us talking about that.
no, they don't. No,
Because if you wanted to exterminate them, you just exterminate them in your own country, right? You don't, house them in concentration camps in order to, send them, somewhere else later.
no.
But this is the kind of post-war myth that the British want to impose on well their own people. So the new national narrative is that Britain sacrifices global empire to save the Jews, and since it sacrifices empire, it's no longer in a position to protect the Jews, but the Americans are and have assumed that burden, and that's what we're all supposed to believe.
Yes, they sell us a narrative that they want. I mean, what I do want to say is I don't want to disrespect any person that died in the Second World War, lost relatives, especially within the Jews. I'm just going to make a point from words that the way I see things. Uh, World War II was a horrific uh, thing. There was a Holocaust, right? And that Holocaust, and the meaning of Holocaust is sacrifice by fire, if I'm correct. Uh, I don't recall that any concentration camps or any evidence has been presented of any sacrifice being made by the Germans in that respect. But I am quite aware of things like the bombing campaigns against cities of Dresden and similar, where phosphorus bombs were used. And this was civilian population. That was women, children, and old people that were not part of the German army. So they were the civilians back there, and they were bombed with phosphorus bombs, phosphorus is material which causes people to burn. So
Yes, it's the stuff they put on matchsticks.
yes, they made phosphorus bombs, and they had a huge bombing campaign, and many people were burnt alive in Dresden. So I often think about why we never talk about that.
Or nuking Japan twice. Non-combatants in there, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They
No,
don't like talking about that either.
no. Well, I think it's the one thing with the Japanese. Their entire generation has grown up with almost like blinkers, towards their real history. They're still American puppets as far as they're concerned. Nagasaki and Hiroshima is, I don't know. It'd be difficult to put myself in their kind of situation, but how would I feel if it had been done to my ancestors and my people?
Yes, I often wonder about the kind of history that they learn at school in Japan. But I mean, Britain is not the only puppet state of America. I'm saying the whole of Western Europe is.
Yes,
And so is Japan, and so is South Korea, and basically any country that operates liberal democracy or representative democracy.
yeah.
And that includes India.
Yes, it does, because I was going to say any country that allows Western NGOs to come and operate in your country, then you're going to experience the same values as the values and the requirements of Washington. You will have to do what they want, and that's the whole function of NGOs coming into your country. They change you from within.
Yes. And the only way to hang on to your worldview is to have a religion, a belief
Yes.
system, a legal system. And that's the only way to protect yourself. I tell the Americans, it's like, look, you guys, you don't have a religion. And they don't. They can't say, oh, but our religion is blah, blah. It's like, no, they don't have a religion. So Jews who say, oh, you can't pass this stupid law about, making transgenderism, an acceptable option and telling our children to believe in that, and Congress will say, well, we're not Jews, we don't believe, that there's a verse in the Torah that says where men and women are not supposed to wear each other's clothes. And Muslims can't say, oh, but we're not supposed to practice usury or whatever it is, because Congress will also say we're not Muslims, so we can do anything we like. And so it is this mechanism that is missing for Americans themselves, who are complaining about their own government. It's like, that's obviously the problem, that you don't have any list of rules with which to hold your ruling classes to account. You can't hold them to account.
Not without religion.
No, because these are religions like, oh, aren't we supposed to be Christian or Muslim or Jewish? And of course, Jews are supposed to do X, and Christians are supposed to do Y, and and Muslims are supposed to do Z. They can't even argue that. So fundamentally, the problem, it lies with America, who controls everything, and it's up to the Americans to just admit that maybe that is something that is missing in their system. And I don't know if I've ever gone on about Washington's farewell speech with you, but there was a lot of warnings and advice in that speech which they have ignored. But what they do every year is that they get a senator to read it every 22nd of February, which is the birthday of Washington, or around that day, and it's just astonishing. He warned them against having political parties, and they completely ignored that. And he also warned them about, and he said things like, we must with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. I mean, he actually said that. And it's like, well, if you're an American, that religion cannot be Christianity, so what else can it be?
Claire, I'd like to finish with that point because I'm going to have to go in a short while.
Well, thank you for coming and staying so long and allowing me to make all my points. I'm
Well,
very grateful to you.
what I wanted to say was, see, the rules are absolutely perfect, but what people seem to be forgetting is it's. I'm going to go back and finish this conversation with the teachings from the philosophy of Islam, and he quite explains that really man needs rules in order to sort of be a better person. In a nutshell, that human beings are sort of prone to doing evil, and even when we become rational, we're still prone to be making mistakes. But once we start to find God, we don't no longer think from the subjective. We become more objective and think from the whole. And in thinking from the whole is what gives birth to us creating rules, because we now realize that the correct way of living was not to worship idols, to commit murder, steal. All those are the rules that our gods have given us, and they were to elevate us from the state of a savage, even from the state of a rational person, to a person that understood that the function of life is to connect with God, and we can only connect to God or start to understand God if we behave correctly. And those rules are there for us to behave correctly, because when everybody behaves that way, it allows our society a lot more time to go into those more mystical, esoteric things that we want to do when we want to develop our relationships with God. So I think religion has a lot of functions, and I need to go. And thank you so very much, Claire, for letting me ramble.
Thank you, Naresh, for coming. I hope we can talk about other subjects too, and I'm very grateful for the wisdom that you have brought to this stream. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you, Claire. My pleasure. God bless you.
You too.
Good
Bye
evening.
bye.
Bye.